What is happening? Oh, there we go.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Karl, you're the guest. Let us do the talking to kick this off, all right?
Is that how that works? Welcome, Karl. Shut your mouth.
This is the most fired up the chat's ever been, from Corey to Trish to Joby's chiming in. And it's because of our guest, Karl Eagleman. You know him as Whiteboard Daily. Perhaps you have this book.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
The Whiteboard Daily Book of Cues. I mean, if you want to be a good coach, you got to have those right there on Amazon. Splurge for the hardcover, $49. There's a Kindle version? Is it colored? Is it black and white?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's $20. I believe it's $20. Yeah, and it's just goes on your tablet, and it might even be easier because you can just scroll and bring up things.
Don't say that. We want people to pay for the big one, Karl.
No, it's horrible. Get the hardback. No,
how many pages is it, Jay? I'm gonna buy it.
Dude, this is like over 400 pages. Well, right around 400 pages.
It's 400 on the dot. 400 pages. It's basically the
for sure the longest book I'll have ever read.
Well, it also has the most
shout
pictures.
Out to Jason Ackerman here somewhere.
There is.
It's on page 401.
Yeah. I gotta find it again. And I'm not just talking about my drawings, but
yeah, it's
Karl,
a write-off, Joby. It's a write-off, Joby.
It's a write-off. Great book. Here's what I would say. I think it's a great book for all coaches, but I think as a box owner, you should have this at your affiliate. It should live somewhere where members can see it, coaches can check it out. It's a great coffee table book, or what would be similar to a coffee table at an affiliate, Fern?
Jerk blocks.
Right on your jerk blocks that no one uses. I like it. I like it.
The reverse hyper.
On that note, I mean, Jay, you know this, but my Phil and Brendan, my weightlifting coaches, we were making a joke recently because I recorded a podcast with him when Nate was here, and they're like, "Yo, can we have jerk block talk? Can we just take it over?" And I was like, "Well, somebody needs to take it. I'm not doing anything with it," because I had made a joke the week before. I was like, "This is karma that I made that YouTube channel and had the jokes about the jerk block talks, and now I have more jerk block talks than any affiliate owner should ever, or jerk block than any affiliate owner should ever have."
Fern, we need to talk offline because Cody, you know what I'm going to say. Cody, get on the screen real quick.
Get over here, Cody.
I've been pushing Cody to do a 5th live episode a week on the Best Hour channel. Let's bring Jerk Block Talks back. Have Phil run it on the Best Hour channel. No one else is doing 5 days a week live.
I'm sure there's plenty of people doing 5 days a week.
No one. It's a trap. What do you think? There we go. We're gonna do it, Cody. We just, we put you to work. Let's just say this before we kick off this conversation. Big day today. Salt Shaker video came out. CrossFit affiliates shared it. Awesome work, Fern. You said Nate was there to film that podcast, but when he was there, that's when you filmed this. About a month ago?
Yeah. When was that? Yeah, something like that. Yep.
It's pretty recent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we might have that for you mid-show as our commercial / bathroom break. But I've been getting texts. I don't know if you've been getting texts, but people are loving it. Share it. I was on our social media earlier. I think it was shared nearly 100 times already.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you guys are watching this, go over to the Best Hour Instagram or CrossFit affiliates. Either way, share it, to your story so more people can see it, because we need to spread that word. Mike Megrian from one of our clients in Massachusetts said, "Are we really under attack?" That was his text. I'm like, look, we're not under attack, but it's lots of small attacks. That's the whole point of the Salt Shaker. It's like everyone coming at us from different directions, claiming this is right, claiming that is right. And it's like, that's what moves the Salt Shaker. It's not one big mass attack. It's lots of
1,000 cuts.
Yeah. So share that. And then let's dig in. Let's talk about the squats. Karl, you are the only person we've pushed an episode back a week for.
I was thinking about that. You guys have gotten pretty high profile, and I felt really bad about having to reschedule, but I really appreciate that because it's an honor to be on your show. And I really, I'm very thankful to be here, and very thankful to just talk about a big passion of mine. So yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, well, it was less out of respect to you and more Cody doesn't like to work that much, and he put so much work
Yeah.
into this episode.
He was like, "This episode's not going to waste. It's happening."
Yeah, I've pulled up
Yeah.
every single squat picture Karl ever drew. Is the squat your favorite thing to draw?
It's yeah, I don't know. Like I like drawing all sorts of movement. I end up doing a lot of variations of the clean and the snatch, and the squat is pretty. I draw the squat. It's one of my favorite lifts, that's for sure. And I coach it all the time, and I'm always finding new ways to communicate cues or movement. And so it's something that I feel like we can have a pretty decent discussion about.
Cool. And by the way, I told you earlier, but Nick, who's in the chat over there at their box, they have a huge drawing. Nick, drop in the chat which drawing you have. It's on the wall. I was watching you in the coach's development yesterday. So, point of the show today, let's talk about all different variations. Let's talk about cues, about fixing, and tips and tricks to make our athletes better in the
Actually,
squat.
real quick, before we do that, because I think this is useful, Karl, the genesis of this, when you started drawing, was the intent, like, were you into coaching at this point, or like how did all this, like, how did you start to kind of back your way into this? Like, I'm doing this and I find that it helps coaches and all that.
I was into coaching already. I'd already been doing. I got my level 1 in 2009, and then kind of actually at the ranch in Aromas.
Nice.
And so like, yeah, and I've talked to Jason about this a few times, but like, yeah, a lot of OGs there. Pat Barber was there, Jolie Gentry, Freddie Camacho, Boz was there. Yeah, just like Neil Maddox was actually in the class with me. So it was pretty cool. And Kalipa, he dropped by. He was doing a workout there. And this is all
funny. There's probably people that don't know some of those names.
Yeah, some of those like Freddie,
those are old names. Freddie, Jolie Gentry. Like that's first winner ever.
How long does that? Because we're at that point now. I think there's a lot of CrossFit and UFC that's kind of overlap, right? And like people that find UFC these days, it's like they don't know the Hoist Gracies, the Mark Coleman's, Ken Shamrocks, right? And it's going to be the same thing for CrossFit. Like at some point, I would imagine, the only reason people know who James Fitzgerald anymore is because of our podcast episode where Fern and him got to an altercation. So, but I mean,
that's not true. That's not true.
But if you were like, who won?
I agree to disagree.
But we are getting there. Is the point.
Like whenever Rogue does the legends, I'm always like, man, those are my people right there. Those are the videos I watched were those guys right there. Josh Everett, I was Matt Chan. Like a lot of guys are just like to me they are it. They are what introduced me to CrossFit. So, but anyway, at that time, yes, I've been coaching for quite a bit. And I also kind of grew up to be pretty artistic. My family was always kind of artistic growing up. And I was like, gosh, a lot of times I feel like when I was coaching, it was hard for me to like be visual aside from just like mimicking a cue. And I think that's another thing that we try to do when you're a coach. You're like, you don't just like say the cue, but you mimic it when you're doing it to kind of help them further understand what you're trying to say. I was like, and then I was just thinking, well, I mean, I could just draw things out and it would be kind of cool to just like, out of everything that I've learned up until this point. And I think I kind of got it rolling around 2015, up until that point, like I just took everything I learned and just started putting like little cues, little tips every single day, and it's just kind of evolved to what it is today. Hey, Corey, by the way, yeah.
Don't give Corey any love. When you are getting coached, are you a visual learner? Do you like visual cues?
I do. I like external cues. I like things that help me see things in a different way. They help. And the thing with cues, and we all know this, is like the more you are able to describe something to somebody, the better a coach you can be, because you can reach a further audience. You can reach people that thing might click with them. So the more cues you have, cueing is not coaching, but cueing can make your coaching much stronger. And so I think cueing is such a valuable part to coaching. So yeah, I'd love to find different ways to cue athletes for sure.
Love it. Love it. So let's dig in. You want to start with Cody's questions here? Cody, should we start with questions from the producer?
Ooh. Just give him
Yeah, let's do it.
Just give him a title.
He gave himself a title in the email for the record. That's how Cody's getting promotions. He just changes his title in the emails.
And
we'll get to the questions from the producer after we go through the
just refer to yourself in the third person.
Let's just get the business stuff first.
Ever since that salt shaker video come out, Fern, he's been so arrogant.
Yeah.
So arrogant. All right. Well, Cody, pull up that image I see right there, the air squat. Let's talk about it.
We'll do it.
So, Fern, our mutual friend Sarah Wilkinson at Level Ones, when I've heard her give the squat lecture, she says the air squat is like the CrossFit handshake. It's like the first thing you do, right? So to me, this is like such a basic but awesome image, right? We've got the air squat, and you've got all the points of performance laid out here. I learned the points of performance. Austin Malleolo and I were studying to become on staff together, and we were always studying. We would go heels, knees, depth, arch, line of action. Heels, knees, depth, arch, line of action. That was our way of memorizing the 5 points of performance when it comes to the air squat. How did you guys do that? Or did you?
As far as learning the points of performance?
Yeah, specifically for the air squat, because these carry over to every other movement we do.
So for me, yes, 100%. And for me, I think what I try to do is I break it down to the most simple terms. I am a head strength and conditioning coach for I think we're about 1,500 students. That's the size of our high school, to give you an idea. I've got
that's a big high school.
I've got a total of 275 students total. And so I coach them. I coach barbell movements. I coach body weight movements all throughout the week. It is all that I see. And I am very thankful for my position because I am just completely immersed in movement. That's all I see. And from one coach to another coach and another coach, I can honestly say every single day I coach my ass off. I really do. I really feel I've never worked as hard as what I do right now. And it helps me because obviously the more you do something, the better you get. And also it gives me a lot of inspiration for what I post on Whiteboard Daily currently. That being said, can I give you a little background? When I'm teaching the squat to my students, on the very first days, what I do, we take off the shoes and we work on the balance, and we work on, because when you think about any kind of barbell movement, well, any kind of movement where you're using some kind of implement, golf, baseball, whatever, there's three things. There's stance, there's grip, and there's position. Okay. So stance is going to be universal for anything that's going to be on the floor. And I start off with like a position, a width that is going to allow you to move through a full range of motion, which is typically shoulder width apart. Okay. And then from there, that's just kind of like setting the standard for everything. And then from there, we work on the balance. We kind of lean side to side, lean forward to back, and we feel that balance in our foot, and that moves us onto the tripod. And we talk about moving through your full foot the full time, full foot, full force, that type of thing. So, and everything kind of begins. Yeah. Big toe pressure is another big one where you're pushing down into the ground. Jason, in the book, we've got, and I've got a hat tip towards you. The feet are talons, where you're grabbing the feet, into the ground. Your feet are active. So everything starts for me with the most special connection, and that's the connection between the body and the ground. And then we work our way up from there.
Fern, anything to add? Flow Master?
Let me ask you this, Karl. So like, obviously you draw these. Yeah, and you have been drawing them for years, and you've probably drawn thousands and thousands of these, and you have 275 students, and you probably see squats every single day. So it's fair to say you've seen your fair share of squats and then follow-on movement patterns for those same athletes. And this is what Jay and I have. We have not debated. We have debated many people on this or had this conversation. How much do you think, and I don't know if there's an exact answer to this, do you think that you could tell about an athlete's overall movement patterns by watching them air squat?
You can tell a fair amount. I know fair is also a relative term, and it's hard to say because check this out. If we're going to talk about range of motion, and actually, so I got my master's in kinesiology from Indiana University, which is actually the same. And I was actually there at the exact same time as a doctor named Dr. Joel Seedman. And if you don't know Dr. Joel,
Didn't he just have a post today?
Oh yeah, he has
on
posts every day.
CrossFit? But I mean, CrossFit just
really?
posted. I believe.
Cody.
Hold on.
Go to look that up.
Go to Instagram. I'm
You don't
pretty
do that
sure
for-
they
that's
just
Cody's job.
posted a.
He's the producer.
I'm going to beat you, Cody. Go. Keep going, Karl.
And so he's known for right angles, 90-degree angles at the hip, 90-degree angles at the knee, how it reduces injury, how it improves performance. And I think there is a lot of legitimacy to what he's saying. I'm not saying he's wrong about anything. I think that there's a time and a place for everything. Even Will Fleming, one of my great friends in Olympic weightlifting, he talks about there's when we're talking about squat depth, like what's the right squat depth? Well, it depends on your lifestyle. It depends on your goals, what you want to do. And for CrossFit, we're talking about functional movement. So we're talking about the entire range of your joint and in the end range and building strength to the end range. When you're getting up off the ground, when you're picking things up, when you're bending over and tossing your kid in the air or mowing the yard, whatever it is, we're talking about the unknown and the unknowable. So in order to be ready for the unknown and the unknowable, we have to be ready for those end ranges that life might take us into those. So it's like, I want to say you can tell a lot about an athlete based on how they move, and specifically in the squat. But then again, too, I think that there's a lot of NFL players who don't necessarily train their end range of motion, who are phenomenal athletes. But when it comes down to the building the strength in the end range, I don't know. I can't say that. So I do not know everything. That's for sure. I can tell you that. But that's kind of my take on things.
No, I think you gave a solid answer there, which is, I think, the appropriate answer. It's a contextual answer. It's not an absolute. Mm-hmm. And the short answer is, like, you can tell a lot, which is a lot of our contention is that if you look at this movement enough, it will give you a really, really good peek into the future. Obviously, it's not going to tell you everything, but it is going to tell you a lot. It's going to tell you a lot about end ranges at the ankle. Are they tight at the hips and knees? Like, what kind of abduction or adduction do they have with regard to the hip flexor? Like, all that stuff will start to expose itself simply by doing an air squat. And yes, you have professional athletes that probably don't have full end ranges and some of that stuff. However, there's large contention that if they did, they would be less powerful in certain positions, right? There is some advantage to being super tight depending on what your sport is.
Agreed. Yes. Yeah. It's not so much like mobility is great, and you need to have mobility leads to better positioning, and better positioning leads to movement efficiency, and movement efficiency leads to strength. So 100%, absolutely. Now, that being said too, it depends on the needs of your sport or the needs of your lifestyle. So, and again, I personally train so that I'm ready for any kind of range of motion that life's going to throw my way.
Do you have an Austin Malleolo version of this anthropometrics where his fingers touch his knees, Karl?
No, I don't. I could do that.
You know what?
Karl? I did it. I did another one with the Barbell Physio down in North Carolina. We collaborated on one, talked about deadlift setup, and I did talk about long arms and short torso. So maybe he might fit. And it's Cody. It's one of the more recent ones.
Yeah, that's actually what I was gonna say, because we see that a lot more in the deadlift. Save that for the deadlift episode. We'll bring it up. What's that, next week? When we go over the deadlift, we'll definitely talk about it, because that's a common thing. Like when I'm at the level 1, I say, like, hey, these things don't lie. Shoulders, hips, and knees. What that looks like for everyone might be a little different, but shoulders, hips, and knees are always going to be there. Much like the points of performance. You can stand wherever you want. The points of performance need to be there. So
it's kind of like this. You're absolutely right, Jason. And a long time ago, I did a post about this, how we are all snowflakes in the sense that we're all different, and our anthropometrics are all different. But snowflakes all melt to the same laws of physics. And so you have to abide by the same laws of physics. I'm not sure if I ever made that connection, but yeah, it makes sense, right? Like
You heard it here first, everybody.
You still have to
We
abide
make this
by
drawing. You tag best hour of their day.
You know I will. You know I
Yeah,
will. Of course I will.
So when we're at the level 1, or you're reading through the manual. We go from the air squat to the front squat to the overhead squat. We talk about, these movements are getting more challenging from air squat to front squat to overhead squat. Something I like to tell people is, it's like, remember in elementary school, they had the magnifying. What is that thing? It's not a magnifying glass. What's
microscope?
I'm so dumb these days. How did I get so dumb in my whole age?
Newsflash, you've always been.
What the heck is that?
What's it called again?
It's a microscope.
Microscope. And you can flick it. And I would always say, like, looking at your air squat is like I'm looking at it. Looking at your front squat is like I've got a 10x. And then we get to the overhead squat and it's like 100x, right? Yeah. Your faults are magnified. Yeah. I love that you're doing that. You're not doing these as much as you should, in my opinion, Karl.
These animations, I should do them more often. It takes a little bit extra time to do the animation, but I like the response, the engagement that I get when I do these. And also I wish that I could find a better way to make it look more like a whiteboard. I feel like the drawing, it looks fine, but man, I really like how that whiteboard marker looks.
You're trying to maintain like growth of a business while the culture stays true to what it once was.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay. Yeah. Look, it's okay. Dave Matthews, I used to see him literally in a college bar. Now I got to go to massive stadiums, right? Same thing for Whiteboard Daily.
Right.
It's still the same. True. Know what I'm noticing
is also because of you.
That is true. It's all of the people liking it are our clients, but that's probably because those are the people we follow, right, Cody? We got Fairwinds over there. You had Eureka earlier. So it shows that our affiliate U clients are checking you out. What, as we move from the air squat to the front squat, what are some of the main things that we can touch on here? Obviously, we could talk about the points of performance, proper rack position, maintaining the bar in the frontal plane.
When you talk about cues, cues for the front squat, I mean, one of the favorites that everyone just loves is the elbows are lasers, and you're shooting at lasers across the room.
Super common, right?
It makes it for a really great visual, a great external cue. The bar being connected to the torso, I think that's a really smart one there. Let me see here. What else I can think of with look at the elbows of lasers. Perfect. Just that the positioning of the arms and also keeping the torso upright as you move through the range of motion. It's going to keep you in a stronger position as well. So yeah, I love the front squat. I do the front squat multiple times a week and teach it and watch it. So I'm always thinking about different ways to draw it up or to cue it.
I love back squatting. I back squat heavy once a week, but I have been trying to front squat a little bit more, just to mix it up. I think there's a lot of value in changing that up, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go on. But when someone asks you, both of you, why should I back squat versus front squat, or why should I front? What do you typically respond?
When I first started my job being head strength and conditioning coach, I was like, man, there's no need. I want to build strength, and the back squat is such a great one for strength over the front squat. But then I started to realize, I always kind of knew this, but I started to why am I shying away from building the mobility that is needed for the front squat, and also the transfer from the clean into the front squat? So now the front squat is programmed just as much as the back squat. And on top of that, I'm even programming more overhead squats now because I'm implementing more power snatches into my programming as well for these high school students.
What are some of the biggest changes you're seeing at the high school level since taking over?
I have noticed I have placed a prominence on mobility. We have a very robust, very comprehensive warm-up where we do, we start off, raising heart rate, increasing body temperature, and then moving on to mobility, and then moving on to specific mobility based on what the movement is. But every single time we do this, and again, if you can imagine, I got some class sizes are upwards of 40 some students or so. I usually average about 40 a class. And so
you're not capping your classes, Karl, is what you're saying.
He's also running a general warm up into a specific warm up. Fern, did you catch that?
I know. Listen, I caught all of it. Yeah.
What I will do is do what I call squat therapy, and squat therapy is
you made this up.
Standing. Well, I don't think it's new. I'm sure other people know it, but I'm not sure if they know by this name. But you stand in a squat stance, likely, shoulder width apart about and toes slightly pointed out, bend at the hip, touch your toes, and then down, sink your hips down, and then put your palms together, push your knees out. So your knees are in line with your toes, push your chest out, get an upright torso, shoulders back. And we spend some time in that in range position there. Then I say, hands down, hips up. And then we'll take it one step further where we'll go back down that position, put a left hand on your left foot, right hand up in the air, look up at your right hand, bring your right hand down, switch. And so the more we spend time in those in range positions, man, I've noticed a massive difference in their squat mobility. Plate assisted squat therapy. That's another one. This one kind of follows along with that squat therapy. And because I do it with them. So it's really benefiting me because I'm doing this 3-4 times a day with my classes. I'm leading them through these warm-ups. And so I'm hopefully leading by example. So my mobility is shot massive, like way up. And so the better position I can be in, the stronger I can be, and I can set an example for these guys.
Well, I think what's worth highlighting here is with this particular version of squat therapy. So that top left corner picture is essentially, I'm assuming what you're highlighting there, Karl, is essentially it's typically not necessarily like a rounded back. You see that a little bit less, but somebody who has an immature squat. And then what I find when I use this is when you're looking at an immature squat, there's typically one of two, we'll call it restrictions. One would be some sort of joint restriction, bony blockage, tendon ligament length, something along those lines. We're just not allowing him to get in position. The other one is general awareness. This drill with the plate is a very good tool to test people's awareness. So for instance, if you can have somebody who starts off no plate in that forward inclinated or the immature squat, and then get them a plate, which allows them to essentially have some sort of leverage with which to manipulate their body in space without actually like being off balance, that is an indicator that it is not something where they have a limitation at the ankle or knee, but an awareness issue that can be developed over time by doing this drill. Because a lot of people are like, oh, he's tight in the ankles. I'm like, maybe, I don't know, but we can find out if he's tight in the ankles, because if I can put him into a position or her into a position absent of raising their heel off of the floor, well, then it's not an ankle issue. It's an awareness issue.
Man, I'll tell you what, body awareness is one of the things that I think is the most important when we as coaches are taking on the perspective of the athlete. And it's easy for you or I to say, like, okay, raise your right hand. Okay, we don't want a right-handed, but it's not, I know it sounds silly, but it's not the case for a lot of students. I do a drill today where we finish up with a kind of like a dynamic warm-up, and I have them at the end of the basketball goal or court, and they're seated with their backs to the court, seated on the ground. And I'll say right or left. When I say right or left, you get up and you move, you turn in that direction and then turn and sprint. Yep. Well, it's simple, right? Turn right or turn left. I'm telling you, the amount of kids, and I'm not just saying that they're dumb kids. I'm just saying, like, it's the body awareness that needs to mature.
It's not just kids, Karl. You should see people step off in the military to march with their left or right foot. I'm like, no, you're military left, your other left. Yeah.
You want me to do what?
It's little things that I try to do to program the brain to the body to be like, okay, we're going to turn right now. We're going to turn left right now. It's like, kind of like those Gundam warriors, right? Who are like the little brain inside the giant robot, and you're trying to like make that connection. It's like a race car driver in his race car. It's like the connection between the mind and the body.
Did you guys ever do the CrossFit football seminar back in the day?
Oh man, no. I
Never took
used
it,
to
but
follow that program for a bit.
same. I did a
John
lot of
Wellborn.
It's now Power Athlete, but it was John Wellborn and
Oh, yeah.
Tex. I don't remember what Tex's actual name was, but doesn't matter. And they used to do in there a lot of one of the things that they would do is a lot of the awareness stuff that you were talking about, Karl, which I think is great. I think it has limited what's the word, utility in a CrossFit class. Obviously there's some, but you can definitely take that too far. But watching people get into some of those agility drills for like sprinting from different positions was interesting to watch, right? Like because if you grow up in that world, like, where Karl, like you're teaching it and you probably deal with a lot of athletes, baseball, football, basketball, you see them do that all the time. And then you watch people do these drills that have never done them before or never had themselves on the field or on the court or whatever, try to unpack that real time. You're like, oh, I can see why you have problems with something very simple like cord extremity, which is not actually very simple. And I think you're right. A lot of that stuff has tremendous value because you can reprogram the brain in order to, make them have the advancements on the neurological front, not just the organic stuff where they're just getting stronger,
So I want to talk a little bit about this. And by the way, Karl, I think the cleanliness of this looks great. I think this is I know for you it's like this is too clean, but I think it looks awesome. I often say if you can't hold the bottom of your squat for 5 minutes, like that's all you need. You don't need anything else. Like this is what's going to make you better. And I did pick that up just like you did from Kelly Starrett. Do you guys agree with that? I know Fern's answer is going to be maybe, but
with what?
That spending 5 minutes to 10 minutes in the bottom of your squat, if you can't do that,
that was one of the best things I probably ever did for squatting was like because I probably the same as you guys. I started watching those videos from day one.
Yeah, that was the first video he did.
Yeah. And it took me probably upwards of a month to get to the point where like I was okay sitting in the bottom of a squat. I could suffer through it right now. But it wouldn't take long, but I've spent a lot of time in that position after when he started that.
I do it almost daily to this day, 5 minutes, not always 10. If I have the time, I do 10. And I remember the very first time.
That's not a good plug for the drill. If you guys have ever seen Jay squat, that means it doesn't work.
But for me, it's I think the most bang for your buck stretch you can do. My lower back is often jacked up, and it's because you're rounding back there. I think it creates a little bit of space in your sacrum that's only really mimicked on the reverse hyper. So I like it for that reason. But I'll do a real time video, Corey. I will come after you, Corey. You don't want that. I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna tag you, Corey. What's your Corey? Drop your handle in here. I'm coming for you.
Just please do the time lapse on it, so we don't have to actually watch you squat for 5 minutes.
Nope, you're gonna be doing it, please. But also the first day I did it, I remember like 30 seconds, my shins were screaming.
Yeah.
And now so when I coach people and I encourage them to do, I'm like, I've been there. I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
There's
I can't feel my legs.
There's a couple little additions to that drill that I believe are all from Kelly's brain with either a band around the knees, like almost like a sissy squat setup, or around the hips in order to pull you into a deeper position. If you want to make it a little bit more advanced to improve your torso position, that can be really, really valuable. But those can get a little excruciating. Like always move out of those positions slowly.
Oh yeah. Getting out of it is great. Yeah, Cody is on point today. So okay, I challenge all the listeners. 10-minute squat test by Friday. I'm in. Tag best hour of their day. Tag Karl in the stories. We will reshare them. And let's see it. Joby, Corey, Nick. I know Nikki Sharp's on here. I know Trisha's on here. 10-minute squat test. You in, Fern?
Yeah.
Okay, hey, I'll get on this train. I'll get on this train too. I'll do a little 10-minute squat test for you guys.
Karl's in it. All right. Tag best hour. Tag Whiteboard Daily. Let's one squat that we don't often see is the Zercher squat. So we talk Zercher versus front squat. Which is more functional?
That's a really great question.
I
In
came up with
terms of
that question,
function,
so I appreciate
it is good.
that.
No, seriously, it really is good because I read that in the show.
Cody came up with that.
Did Cody come up with it? It's a great idea because it makes sense. Like one is a carry. Here's the deal. This is how I take it. One is a carry and one is a balance. The back squat is a balancing act. You're balancing it over pretty much that middle part of your foot. And as you move through the range of motion, obviously with the Zercher, now we're adding the arms into it and you're holding it against your body. So there's less of a balance because it's closer to, I would guess, your core. I don't know. You still have to balance it, no question, but it's less of a balancing act in the sense that it's bouncing on your back. I'm going to say the Zercher is more functional to everyday life than the back squat. Yeah.
What about we talked about comparing it to the front squat, but certainly I think if I'm looking at it, like the back squat is best to get strong, like just be under load, right?
Yeah.
Time under tension. Back squat will get you stronger. Front squat, transferability to, like you said earlier, the Olympic lifts. Zercher squat, just like real world. In Cody's question, he's like, if I'm lifting furniture or other objects, it's probably going to look very similar to a Zercher squat. Is it Zercher or Zercher? Am I saying it right?
I've heard it. Yeah, I've heard it said both ways, and I actually don't know which one is correct. They're both functional, right? Like you can think of any number of times where I've done both scenarios because at the end of the day, they're both a squat, right? Like you're squatting, right? It's not about like where you hold the load. It's the fact that like, can you squat from that position?
Yeah.
And this is kind of like the close to the common movement themes lecture, which you did a fairly average job of when you gave it in Puerto Rico.
Fernando gave it.
Yeah. Well, then Fernando did a great job. Yours was garbage. But we're talking about effective stance and grip. So this is a grip question, which is like, am I gripping the bar on my back? Is it overhead? Is it front squat? Or I have it, in my arms? And that's going to be based on the task at hand. I could think of very few scenarios where I've probably actually done a squat from either one of those positions real world, but can you, I think, is really the question. Mm-hmm. Like I've carried around like heavy cement bags or bales of hay or something like that, but very rarely am I squatting them. Like your kids, you pick them up off the floor, furniture, maybe, but I think what's to be noted about that progression from either back squat to front squat to Zercher squat is the demand on core strength increases as you move from one to the other. Let's assume that we're doing a high bar versus a low bar because of where the load is placed on the body, meaning it moves further past frontal plane in that scenario, that's why people are like, what's the functionality of the front squat and being in a position? I was like, well, it requires a significant amount of core strength in order to maintain good position. It doesn't mean that your legs are any weaker because the limiting factor for the front squat is very rarely the legs. It's like torso, right? Like you just, you can't not look like a wet taco at some point. And then same thing for the Zercher squat, like or safety squat bar, right? Like as that weight gets displaced forward, physics starts to kick in, and it's a midline stability drill, not necessarily a leg strength drill. And I think that's actually the value of those variations of squat is like to really, really start to shore up any weaknesses you might have at the midline by throwing those different variations, right? Like think about the difference between just doing something like, we did kettlebell lunges today. Like the difference between having a kettlebell on the shoulder, right? So like directly over frontal plane versus like right here tucked way harder, right? It's not the weight, it's the same 55 pounds, right? But that displacement of call it 3 to 5 inches forward is a game changer.
Well,
space is weak.
Space. Oh, I like that.
Yep.
Space is weakness. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you answer this at level ones, Fern or Karl, when you're coaching, but I always tell people the difficulty defines the need, right? As Glassman would say, but you struggle with that front rack position. There's a couple stretches that'll probably benefit you for sure, but spending time in that front rack position is the best thing you can be. Like being in the positions is almost always the best thing to help you be in the position.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And to go back to that question, Cody, if you want to bring that question back up from the comments, but it's like, my take, because I do see a ton of mobility issues when it comes to front rack with my students. And if they have an issue, I'm not going to put them in a Zercher position. I'm going to, a good fix, I think, a temporary fix is just to put the straps on the bar and to get the elbows up where they're attached to the straps on the bar. And that way they can actually figure out, because the bar has to rest on that front rack position. It has to be connected to the torso. And additionally, they start to get the idea of where the elbow should be. They start to work on the mobility that might be through lat tightness. They start to work on some wrist mobility stuff there. So you can't to say someone has an issue with mobility so they can't do something. Well, you're just kind of going around the issue. You're not addressing the issue itself.
So you would go to like the towels for the rack before a genie squat?
Yes, because there's
Yeah,
more
I would too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree.
from the clean,
Which is a safety bar squat. I mean, well, it's the same position as a safety bar squat. Obviously, the load displacement on the safety bar squat is different, but the I also think it should be noted, like just because the Zercher squat, you have it in the kind of crease of your arm, it doesn't mean that movement comes without restriction and limitation. Like that is not an easy movement to perform by any stretch of the imagination. So I think no, it's definitely not comfortable. And that is probably the downfall of that movement for most people. The load able to be moved in a Zercher squat is not anything comparable to any of the other ones for the vast majority of beginners. Not to say you can't move heavy loads. I've seen some pretty ridiculous stuff with regard to the Zercher squat and like heavy loads being moved. But for most people, it's going to be excruciating once you even get to some moderate loads. Like they're 135 on the bar and do some Zercher squats. Like that's not going to be comfortable.
It does not feel good. It hurts.
There's some dude on Instagram. I think he hit like a 315 clean that he purposely caught in a Zercher squat. It was nuts. It was nuts. I'm like, that looks like it hurts. So let's move on to the overhead squat. Genie in a bottle. Corey's question about the genie squat. I think time and a place. I like what Karl and Fern said. All you need to do is buy a cheap towel, cut it. They sell things. You can use wrist wraps, but like you said,
wrist wraps is the best one to use in my opinion.
Yeah,
it gets transferability going, but time and a place with an injury to still do that. I mean, I grew up genie squatting as front squatting. It's a dead end movement, as we would say at the level 1. Like you're never going to squat clean and catch it like this. There's no movement that comes. There's no thruster from there. So if someone's injured, if someone truly can't be in that position, I'd rather them do that than not squat. But that would be lower down on the totem pole. Oh, I love this drawing, Karl. I love it.
The other thing about that with regard to the genie squat is like there is a safety aspect to that movement where it's just like it's kind of hard to control with regard to ditching or anything like that because you really don't have any sort of like legitimate control of the barbell from that position. Where if I have straps or if I have in a front rack position, at least I can push the load away from me in the event that I had to ditch it. And that's really why I don't love it. It's just you're essentially just dropping the bar down.
To be able to move your hands fast enough, it's going to potentially catch your quads on the way down. Is what you're saying.
It's just an awkward position altogether. I mean, I know why it was developed, but there are better options than that position.
Do you guys remember when you first overhead squatted? Because I don't think many people do it before CrossFit.
CrossFit,
I got
2008.
I got a story about that. It was 2009. I was with Savan Matosian in the Berkeley Rec Sports facility, the Berkeley RSF. And the first time I ever overhead squatted was with him. And we were in a power rack cage and then it had like the safety arms on it,
I feel like I know where this is going.
he went and his mobility at the time too. I mean, it was better than mine, but it still wasn't the best because we were, he had still been doing CrossFit for quite some time, but it wasn't the best. And he had to bail and he bailed and the bar went down just straight and landed on the safety arms of the power crate cage. made the loudest noise ever. And he and I both looked at each other like, well, it's not gonna keep us from overhead squatting. And so I put the bar on my back, popped it up there. Same thing happened. Here we are just making a ruckus and just like thinking that we're CrossFitters and we can do whatever we want, wherever we want to do. And sure enough, we were like getting eye rolls and side eyes from other people. But man, it was the very first time. And I was like, how in the world are people supposed to squat in this position with a barbell over your freaking head? This is impossible. Well, the more you do it, the better you get. But anyway, it was definitely with Saban. So pretty crazy to think about that.
Where'd you do it, Pat Sherwood?
Yeah, CrossFit Virginia Beach. I remember when the first time I overhead squatted 135, it was horrendous, like full pterodactyl internal rotation. However, when I finished that squat, the American flag draped down, they played the Star Spangled Banner, everybody clapped. It was really, really impressive. No, but I do remember how I don't think I have any pictures, but I would be fully confident saying that when I'm a decent squatter now as far as position. I'm fully confident saying that when I first started overhead squatting, it was hot garbage with regard to immature squat internal rotation and just full forward inclination of the torso. Like I'm not even that sure how I would be capable of doing that at this point.
Isn't that the coolest thing about these movements? Like none of us, I mean, at least speaking for me and Fern, like we never spent a ton of time on mobility or really like doing anything crazy. We just simply did these functional movements for the last 10, 15 years, and your body gets more, more flexible, gets in these positions better. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Remember back in the day, level ones? Yeah. Nicole Carroll used to go against like Glassman used to pick out a big, strong person in one of the participants. He'd be, I think it was 95. There's videos of it out there. Cody, you'll find one. And nobody's looking for it.
Medical advantage.
And he's like, hey, squat this as many times. I remember there's one. It was a huge dude. If you find this, Cody. And then Nicole Carroll picks up that bar and she beats him.
Goes to town.
Yeah. Later on, they also did that for the push press and the push jerk. But I remember that video specifically. Now that I say it, it might have actually been Stefan Roche before he was a part of CrossFit. I might be making that up. Well, I'll bring up this question while Cody's Googling. I've been told by some they do not believe in kicking the hips back in the beginning of the descent of the overhead squat. Thoughts? This is from Mind Benderify.
That's not correct.
Mind Blenderify.
There we go.
I don't know how. What would that? I mean, you would call that a what is that called? Like soft hip, not soft hips. Knee initiated. That's what it is. Yeah. No, I don't. That to me doesn't. That's not correct.
Here's what I think. Going back to my analogy earlier of the microscope, if you will, I think a lot of people maybe don't hip initiate enough, right? So their knees are going forward. Then we get to the overhead squat. I see it every week in a level one. Fern, I know you do too. Bars overhead. I want to keep that bar over the midfoot, over my head. But if I send my butt back, my shoulders are too tight, so I can't pull back. So what I in turn do is send my knees forward. So people that don't necessarily knee initiate their air squat or front squat, once they have that bar overhead, in order to keep it in the frontal plane, they jam their knees forward to keep that bar over. You see that?
Well, of course. Well, I think I would like maybe if Mind Blenderify can clarify on this. But Karl, like if you were to verbally explain the mechanics of this air squat, we don't even need to go front squat, overhead squat, with regard to the relationship of the hips and knees, what would that sound like?
Well, this is how I describe it, because I do, like I said, I'm teaching the overhead squat with all my students, and I describe it as this: like when we're back squatting, when we're back squatting, you need a good amount of hip mobility to keep your torso as upright as possible to move through that range of motion. We can all agree that your torso is strongest when it's upright as possible. You start to bend over, you're not getting stacked anymore in your vertebrae, and things are going to get weaker. Okay, so we want to keep that torso upright in that stacked position. Now, once I have a bar overhead, Now I need good shoulder and hip mobility, because if my torso goes forward, then that means the bar needs to go back. So it needs to be a balance between keeping the bar over the midfoot. And so I have them stand what I call in that coaching position on either side of me. I say, okay, look at my shoelaces. Now draw this line straight up my body. And I talk about the frontal plane. I want to keep this bar over that position as much as possible. Now, I'm not necessarily answering your question, but like I try to, the first thing I do really is just, I got 45 PVC pipes and put one in each person's hand. And then we just take it from there. Cause the very first thing that's going to happen is going to be that bar goes forward, and they don't really, the tough thing, and we all know this, the tough thing about PVC pipes, especially when it comes to front rack position, is that there's so little feedback from the bar. It's good for overall general positioning, but you need a little bit of weight too to get the more weight, the more feedback, right? And so like in the L1 where we talk about same thing I do. I say, okay, listen, if you want a little bump up, a little bit more feedback, put that plate, put a 5 on the PVC pipe, then put that over your head. Then things start to click for them. Like, oh, okay, now I see where that center of gravity is going. So much of what I've learned in my day-to-day teaching is based on the foundation of what I've learned through CrossFit and what I've coached through CrossFit. There's so much CrossFit that's woven in my style of teaching that it's just who I am. It's just how my teaching goes. So if it wasn't for that, I don't know where I would be.
Where I was kind of going with that is, number one, Cody, if you can pull up the squat Bible that he was talking about there, it's by Aaron Horschig. I think this is a bit of a nuanced question with regard to the hips back thing, and this is from my experience teaching it. So this is the book he's referring to. That's where he heard it. I'm sure it's a statement. I'm familiar with that book. I have not read it, but I am familiar with the book. I should read it. I would tend to believe that if I had a conversation with this doctor, we would probably agree. This is typically with regard to that specific question that about the hips going back is not necessarily like hips go back or not. It's a timing issue or it's a sequence issue. Meaning,
exactly.
This is when we're talking about the 5 points of performance, this is referring to line of action when the hips and knees should move in unison. Versus, I would probably agree with this person to say like we don't want to shoot our hips back while having zero flexion at the knees. You also don't want to shoot them back too far. The hips do in fact have to go back and down to get into a squat position. I don't think it's a debate about whether the hips go back or not. I don't even think that's something that could be discussed. I think that's just the way it has to happen. I think it's a timing and a degree issue, right? Like, are the hips moving absent of flexion of the knees? Are the knees flexing in absent of flexion of the hip? And then how far back are the hips going, in order to create essentially what would be either an upright torso or an immature squat. I think that's what he's referring to. And I'm really confident that I would probably agree with his sentiment on the squat position and the sequence of those joints. But I always teach it if you're into, like Jay, you're into music or you've played guitar horribly at some point in your life, the music, right? So if you're thinking about like cadence, right? So if I think a 2 count is 1, 2, if we're squatting and the hips flex and then the knees flex, that's incorrect. But if I go hips and knees together, that's a 1 count. That's the way the squat should be executed. Those joints shouldn't be moving independently of each other with regard to the timing of flexion.
I love that.
You're referring to rhythm, Fern.
No, maybe cadence though. Hey, that's, if I understood that question better, then that's exactly.
I think that's what he's referring to. That's the only thing I can. Yeah, I think that's what he's referring to. That's the only thing I can think of, because I think most people who are kind of pretty good at understanding the squat mechanics understand that, like, yes, I don't want to kick my hips back, nor do I want to go anterior rotation in order to like get into that one. I think you've drawn that one too, Karl. With pelvic tilt. Mike, who is Mike
versus Mike?
Who's Mike?
This is it. This is what I was talking about. It wasn't. This is it. Cody. You found it.
Initially, I thought what you're going to bring up, I thought was Brian Chantosh.
No,
At one of those.
there might be a video of him as well doing this, but yeah.
Shout out to Brian for just rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, by the way.
Yeah, no kidding.
Did you pause it or is it just frozen?
I think it's just the internet.
Look at her torso.
Yeah.
That is the thing.
That's
Is
cool.
this is
That's
what
She still squats like that.
I was gonna say. I did a workout with her probably like 3 months ago. She's still so freaking fit.
Mm.
By the way, isn't even breaking parallel, and she's just burying it.
Oh no!
This is so cool because this is what like talking about like what modern day CrossFitters don't realize. Like this was the level 1. Like Glassman would show up, have a rough idea of what was going to happen, and be like, "You overhead squat. Let's go do Fran. Let's go do that." Right? Like this was my first level 1, just like this. So it's so cool. This guy's dying.
It's basically just proof of concept at this point in its evolution.
I mean, I wish I remember like all the way back, but I don't think like What Is Fitness had the 4 models at the time. Like,
no, it didn't.
Yeah,
because they hadn't. He hadn't. I don't think he had actually defined the full definition. Hadn't been defined. He wrote that original article in 2002, but I don't think the full definition came to light for years after that.
Yeah. That's so cool. All right, let's get to some other. Let's dig into some of these questions. We've kind of covered this, but let's approach from Cody's wording. Where does anthropometric limitation versus lack of a mobility begin and end? Feels like an easy cop out to blame your body instead of your lack of mobility work.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what it is. And again, I see students every day that are like, I can't do this because of this. I'm like, well, I think you can't do this because I don't think you're working on it and you don't really want to. 100%. I don't know how to answer that, where it begins and where it ends, other than the fact that like everyone's different. I think it goes back to Jason, which you said earlier with regard to you for the deadlift setup, for example. There's certain things that you just can't get around. For example, knees, then hips, then shoulders. And then there's going to be variations of degrees within there, but for the most part, you're going to have those 3 layers. You're going to have that cheeseburger or that
hamburger. Yeah.
But so there are these general. Everyone's different, but also we all have to abide by the same laws of physics. I don't know how else to say that.
Yeah, I think you said it well.
I just realized I was looking at this. The squat Bible. I don't know why I didn't make this connection earlier. Just I guess I wasn't paying attention. That guy, Dr. Aaron, he is Squat University. That's his Instagram handle.
Oh, that's his.
Yeah.
book?
So yeah, and that's
He's
his
also.
book, so.
It's also the same publisher as my book too. So
pull that up, Cody. Pull that up. Pull that book up.
Is that this VB? You can't see it.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
He has a tremendous amount of information, and if you don't follow him, you should. He does a lot of breakdown of a bunch of different things with regard to movement. Super smart dude, 10-pound brain for sure. And on that note, I'm 100% confident that we would agree on that assessment about that. It's probably just a.
We've got a few more questions we're going to get to. However, Fern, we almost forgot. I
didn't. I never forget. An elephant never forgets.
We premiered the Salt Shaker on Instagram this morning. It's also coming to YouTube, correct, Cody? But if you haven't seen it yet, you're in luck.
My name is Jason Fernandez, and I'm a CrossFit affiliate owner.
Tell me about the Salt Shaker.
The Salt Shaker analogy is something that Boz presented to all of us on training staff several years ago. Imagine a table, and at the center of that table, there's a salt shaker. And that salt shaker represents your beliefs and your values. And at some point, somebody's going to come along for reasons unbeknownst to you, and they will challenge those beliefs. And the challenge that he presented to us, what we were charged with, was to defend those beliefs. And those are known as salt shaker moments. And we all have salt shaker moments in our lives. We have them outside of the gym. We have them as athletes. We have them as coaches. We have them as affiliate owners. And it can be tough, because when somebody comes along and they challenge your beliefs, you have to stand your ground. And those challenges could be, hey, you can't make money running a CrossFit gym. You need to have this program or that program in order to make it work. It could be, people can't get results in a group setting. You can't create careers for people. And the reality is, those are all distractions. They're distractions from what we know will get us to the goal. And that's the unreasonable pursuit of virtuosity. A level of virtuosity that permeates the affiliate. Every barbell, every plate, every pull-up bar, every athlete, every coach, every interaction that we have as affiliate owners with every single person. Because we know CrossFit works. People all over the globe walk into affiliates and have profound life changes. In order to keep doing that, we have to hold the line. We have to keep steadfast in our beliefs. And we have to not let people move the salt shaker. Because it's exactly where it's supposed to be.
So good, Fern. So good.
It was very well spoken. That's what I liked about it.
Fern speaks well.
I think we shot it like 3 times. The first like 2, I think, or maybe twice. First couple times I think I was just nervous. Like I just couldn't get fucking sent. I mean, Nate probably says it went fine, but I felt super nervous shooting it. It was
Well,
I think it was weird.
Well, for one, you've been thinking about that video for quite some time.
Mhm.
And I also think you knew before doing it, it was going to be impactful and a lot of people would see it. So you wanted it done well.
I just think it's an important message, right? I think it's not about like me or us or what we're doing. It's about the message, which is like, we know it. We don't need to think about it, in all these crazy ways. We just need to continue to focus on it and do it better every single day. That's the message, right? It doesn't need to be modified. You don't need to change your business model. None of that shit. Just do your thing really well, and then do it better tomorrow.
That's how CrossFit started off, though, too, right? It was always about like, let's take the best stuff that we know from the other people, put it together, learn from other people, and it was just like, it wasn't about changing things up. It was about like, if anything, just evolving or just trying to improve. It's not like, I don't know. I think a lot of people just they want change, or they want something different, or they want new scenery, or they want to try something like new. And I'm like, man, just like stick with what works, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, shit works. We don't need to change it. Yeah. Anybody who's telling you otherwise probably has some other shit to sell you. So,
or they're just not very good at doing this thing.
That is a more accurate statement.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to a few more of these questions, Karl and Fern. Why is the pistol often taught differently than the air squat? Right, we're on squatting, the pistol or single leg squat. Why is it taught differently?
It's so different. For me, I teach it so much different. Do
you actually teach that to your students, Karl?
I will do a weekly movement challenge with my students, and and I'll teach it just like this hinge into your pistol. To me, I call it like the abbreviated movement version, where you're standing tall, you balance on one foot, you bend over at the hip, and you grab your foot. Then from there, you hinge around your knee, where you send your hips back, your knee goes forward, and you keep your chest over the base of your foot, and then you go from that position, and then you just reverse it on the way back up. And to me, it's like the easiest way to do the pistol, because you're starting off with balance, and then you're adding the mobility. And after that, you're not doing a strict version where you're standing tall, hands out in front of you, leg goes out in front of you, sink down, stand up. To me, this is like an easier way to like kind of pass through that range of motion. Again, I don't have.
I like
that
that teaching point, by the way, that the movement kind of centers around the knee, just from a visual and from a cueing standpoint. Because it's probably easy to walk people through that in a Simon Says type coaching format as well.
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure many other people have done this before, but it's the way that I learned, or maybe I taught myself. I was like, maybe it's like I needed some more mobility, some more movement, or some more warming up. And I was like, well, I'm just going to try and do this. And I kind of came up with this style to do it. And I'm sure other people have done it as well, but it worked for me. So I figured it would probably work for other people.
I think what people are referring to, I think the question there, but you can clarify here, Cody, is the back issue. Is that right? Is that what you're kind of referring to as far as teaching it?
Yeah, like the squat is, keep the vertical torso, hips back and down, and then in the pistol, a lot of times we see something like that's a little bit, looks more like this, where we're going to lean forward. And I know it's a balance issue, but what's the reason behind it?
Well, not a lot of the time. It's like all the time, really. Like you're not going to see any and that's for a couple of reasons. And I don't want to steal Karl's thunder. I'll let him take it, but it's mandatory.
What's mandatory? I didn't catch that.
So that position, right? Like you're not going to see somebody in a neutral spine in the pistol
unless they're like insanely mobile.
Yes, and here's the deal too. Like whenever I go to draw something up, man, I really will try my best to like do as much research because I want to make sure that I'm representing something well. And I'm pretty sure I even maybe I pulled this bottom position from the bottom position of the CrossFit video demo movement. And I'm like, sure enough, there's flexion in the spine. And it's not like you have a neutral spine when you're moving through this. There is flexion through there. So it's like, and really, this is unloaded. This is a gymnastics movement. So there's going to be variations of the hollow and the arch in gymnastics movements. And when they're unloaded, we're talking about body weight positioning. So you're not carrying a load. So you're going to see some flexion through there.
Yeah, it's not unsafe. It'd be unsafe if you were to load it. There was an old test that Kelly Starr used to do videos on this, but if you had somebody sit on the edge of a table, right? So imagine you're sitting on the edge of a table. You can't really do it on a chair because you're typically too high. Your feet need to be suspended in air. So for Jay, a normal chair for you, this would work. And then have them sit upright into a neutral spine and then have them extend their legs and watch what happens to the vast majority of people's lumbar spine. You'll have, for most people, they'll go from neutral, natural S curvature of the spine to a complete change in position. If they're really pretty mobile, you'll have a slight deviation position. And then for people that have full range at the glute and hamstring, they will have little to no change in that position. And that's before we talk about changing that position altogether. And it has to do with kind of like hamstring and glute, but it's a good indicator of like why that's going to happen. Because as you kind of like move into those positions, you're exposing like hamstring length, and then this paired with balance, right? Mm-hmm. Because I need to be, my foot's out in front, so I need to have more load forward. Because if that person was squatting, the vast majority, their weight would be all fucked up now, and you would just fall down for the most part.
Yeah. Agreed.
What is a commonly missed part of correcting a squat?
A commonly missed part of correcting. Oh, easy. Not focusing on balance first. Like it's all about balance. It's all about balance. Like it's all about how your foot is connected to the ground, and shoes are so over-engineered and there's so much cushioning that you lose that connection with the ground. And so people start looking further up the chain, and you're looking at stuff that can be fixed with just balance. Yeah. Screw your feet into the floor. To me, that's like the basics for everything. It all starts with how your feet are connected to the floor.
Well, and I was going to say, it's not something that's missed, more so just not fixed is your stance. So I think we're kind of on the same page. Like, so much will be improved in someone's squat just by putting them in the proper setup position, like you said earlier, Karl.
Yeah.
What is a common cue used while correcting a squat that can be said better?
Okay. Oh man, it's tough. you know, what's
Knees
the most
out. I
common
was going to
thing?
go with knees out. We needed
I was
better.
gonna go with chest up, but
Well, those are,
okay,
I think
easy. Okay,
those are
I'll take
easy, and
I'll
those are
take knees out.
common. Yeah.
I'll take knees out. That's really it's easier to talk about. Again, balance with the foot. If knees are coming in, there's likely more balance on the inside of the foot, on the toe, like the big toe and the inside of the heel. So if you want to say, here's another thing too that kind of helps out. I'm not sure if it helps you guys out, but what I do, I have my students stand in a squat stance, and then I have them kind of, I say, okay, now just lean side to side. Lean side to side. When you lean to the right, lean to the left. When you lean to the right, I want you to bend your knee in that same direction. Cool. I'll do the same thing on this side. And then they start to look down and they see their knee tracking in the same direction as their foot. I'm like, okay, cool. So what we're going to do now, when you squat now, I want you to squat sending those knees out in that same direction. And I'm telling you, man, like that to me is one of those light bulb moments. They're like, oh, okay. Now when you say knees tracking in the line with the toes or knees going the same direction, that makes more sense. I can do that. So again, balance, right? It goes back to balancing, side to side.
Go ahead, pull that up, Cody, since we already talked about pistols. ACH. Do you let a client do their pistols in a workout if their heels elevate in case it comes up this week or next? Well, meaning in the open, I assume.
Well, it's the open. Everything goes.
That's true.
Yeah.
So let's just say it wasn't the open. Where do you guys draw the line here?
No.
I would not. I would have them place a plate underneath their heel, or I would make an accommodation for them so they're not putting themselves in a dangerous position.
Yeah, and oftentimes a counterweight helps too, right? So a counterweight might let them sit back and now stay on their heel. I'm all for plates under their heels. I think it becomes a crutch for some, and it could become dangerous if there's other movements going on in the workout, depending on what's going on. But yeah, good question. All right.
Hey.
Are we going with knees out for the common cue that could be said better?
Yeah, we can do that. By the way, Cody,
I think you should. I'm curious what you would say with the chest up, Karl, because I think I know what you're going to say there, but I'm curious now.
Yeah. I don't. Well, what I do instead of chest up, it's like I commonly say, I want to read your shirt. I want to see. I really want to read your, because all students have some kind of like logo on their shirt. And I say, I want to see your shirt when you're down in that position. When they do that, it's more. It doesn't fix the problem of hyperextension through the back if they do that, but they're less likely. It's like I'd rather have them do that and be in that position rather than just bowing over and in extreme flexion. So like, show me your shirt is a common one there.
What were you saying about this drawing, Karl?
It was the other one. It was the movement, identifying a movement issue. And that's a shout out to Chuck Bennington. He's just a super smart, very awesome, caring dude. And I learned that from him during the gymnastics certification. And I think it's a great little way to identify a movement issue. First, is it a mobility issue? Then is it a skill issue? Like, first is it mobility? Can they not move into that position? Second, do they not have the skill to do that? Third, do they just not have the strength to do that? One of those things.
Last question from the producer. You ready for it? What is an active shoulder in the overhead squat? Shoulders down and tucked, or pressed up into the bar?
No, definitely down and tucked, packed is what I would say.
That's interesting, because I think we're going to coach. Many people coach that differently. Go on.
I would not push up. And I remember when I first started to learn how to overhead squat, and I remember some of them, I feel like it was incorrectly. It was on the message board somewhere, and they were saying like, you should act like you are Atlas, holding the world above your head and pushing up into the world. That's not the case. You should have a packed lat. When I say packed, I mean activated, pulled down, scaps there. And when you do that, what I'm talking about, again, there's other people who have different perspectives on this, depending on what kind of coaching you follow. But for me, it's elbows down, armpit forward, packed lat. And you actually, if you really want to help yourselves out, you can actually kind of push the bar, push your hands away from each other in that overhead squat position. That's going to create a connection with the bar to your body. You'll have a deeper connection rather than just like holding the bar above your head. So that's my quick take on that.
What do you think, Fern?
What do you think, Frank?
Again, I think this is a nuance. Well, no, I don't. I think this is I think this is an argument or a debate that like is just splitting hairs, right? So like,
I
for
agree
instance,
with you. I agree.
which
yeah.
is so I think everybody's actually saying the same thing, just differently based on their understanding of the position, right? So like based on what you just said, Karl, if you're like, if I'm pulling back and down, then it's a little bit hard for me to kind of like pull down and press out at the same time, like with regard, because that out actually has an upward direction in it, right? So if I'm thinking about vectors, right? Like, so that is a little bit challenging. Also I do think there is some restriction with regard to like, if you were to pull your scaps down and then try to get into overhead position, it would inherently be restricted to some degree, right? So
I see that.
if I kind of like elevate a little bit, now I can move into that position. So I don't think it's an either or. It's probably a timing issue. It's one of those things where I'm like,
I will say
again, going back to like a statement that we say in what we say in the foundations of effective training, it's not about being technically correct. What does a position look like is at the end of the day all that really matters, right? If it looks like shit and you gave push up, then it doesn't work. If it looks like shit and you gave pack the lats, then it's not a good cue. And I don't know that it matters which one they're doing. Like, does it look like a good position and can you get them saying either one of those things?
Yeah.
Great, use them both.
Yeah. I 100% subscribe to that notion. I like that very much. Yes, agreed.
You say health, I say vitality.
Vitality, right? I agree with you. I don't think that you do. I don't think that you do.
Cody, any other pictures you wanted to pull up from Karl that we can discuss when it comes to the squats?
No, you guys pretty much hit on everything that I had and just different variations and stuff. But that was really good.
Actually, pull up that this one here. Sorry, I'll pull it up. This is an underutilized skill, by the way, for the pistol. If we go back to the pistol, so having them not extend their leg forward, but actually having them hook their foot behind the heel and still being able to do a single squat for people that lack the mobility or balance to get into that position, still allowing them to get essentially the single leg squat in. This is kind of like the beginner version of that.
I was at a competition way back when, and they let them. Somebody was like, "Can we squat like this?" And they were like, "Sure." And then everyone was doing it, and they were like, "Wait, like you can't do this." But it was like,
well, the issue is you can push off of that leg, so it's kind of cheating.
That's James. Is that James?
Yeah.
Who's in that video right there? That movement, strong. Oh no, that's not James.
No, it's not James. But the issue is you can push off of that because the foot is underneath you, like on your other leg, right? So that's where. But again, that's not the point, right? It's a scaling option, right? Like again, I want there to be some assistance in any sort of scaling option, whether I'm holding on to something, using a rubber band, whatever, squatting to a box.
Yeah. And
they use that's a variation they teach or a scale in the gymnastics course certification.
Yeah, great
gymnastics course coming March 25th, 26th, CrossFit Rife. Be there.
Oh, you guys hosting it?
Yeah, cool.
Is Tony going to be there? Oh no, Tony's not doing them right now. I think.
I don't actually know who's going to be teaching the course. To be honest with you, I can find out.
Very cool. You guys ever done Nancy? Trish brings it up in the chat. You guys ever do it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've done Nancy many times.
It's one of my
look
favorites.
Up my scores. Yeah.
We've seen an overhead squat in the open before, right?
Yeah, I've seen tons of overhead squats.
Yeah.
It was definitely one of those ones. I think it was paired with for sure with a pull up.
Yeah.
With a pull up where it's like the ascending ladder. You had to buy in. You had to buy into the next round.
Yeah, that was. I love that style. The 3 minutes.
I do too, because I've just done after 3 minutes. So it's super easy for me.
That was a good one. They did it like Fran one year. They did it with overhead squats one year.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's the same volume.
Do you have your students do the open, Karl?
No, I don't. I could see myself doing it in the future. It would take a lot of coordination. I'm trying to think when I could do that throughout the day. And but man, I think it could be possible. I think it'd be good.
Well, what's next for Karl? What's next for Whiteboard Daily? Like we talked about earlier, go on Amazon, buy the hardcover, the Whiteboard Daily Book of Cues. I think you were telling me were telling us ahead you might have a number 2 coming out.
Yeah, I'm going through, I mean, if you want to talk nuts and bolts here, I'm actually going through the contract for my second book right now. So it's going to be, what I would like to do is kind of broaden the horizons of what, the same type of delivery, but like to a wider audience, which is cool. But like, I feel like I'd like to do what I like to do. And the stuff that I like to do is the stuff that you see on Whiteboard Daily. So it's a lot of Olympic weightlifting type cues, a lot of barbell type cues. But I want to get more into posture and positioning and bracing, those sorts of things that you can apply to many different other modalities or movements. So yeah, working on the second book. I'm going to start ironically. So, and by the way, Danny Lear, he says hi to you guys.
Caffeine Kilos, Danny?
Yeah. He just called me while I was on this and he told me to tell you guys hi.
Hey,
there you go. So
look at us. Look at us. Shout out.
I don't have anything caffeine kilos here. So we're going to start ramping up some new, better Whiteboard Daily apparel and merchandise. So I'm really excited to do some more updated stuff with him and Dean and those great guys over there. And what else is new? What else am I working on? That's kind of it right now. That, along with teaching and coaching and trying to be the best husband and father that I can be, and all that stuff. I'm just staying busy. That's for sure.
That's what it's all about.
My gosh! I'll tell you, baby. I'm gonna put this out here right now. If anybody knows someone who can help me develop an app, I have worked with 2 or 3 different app builders. They've contacted me. They said, "Hey, listen, if you work with us, we'll build an app for you." And the whole process has taken a few months in some cases, but they've never been able to deliver on exactly what I would like to do. If you know somebody who can develop an app that is basically a giant directory of all the Whiteboard Daily content that I've ever created that can be on your phone, please reach out to me.
I got somebody. His name's Anasan.
Bring it.
He does apps. Yeah. I'll hook you up. Cool. I mean, if anybody else knows someone, feel free to shoot Karl a DM over at Whiteboard Daily. But I'll connect you with Anasan. From what I understand, because we've also talked about apps. It's just they're always more expensive and a whole lot of upkeep. But I'll introduce you offline.
Very much appreciated. Trish, you bring up another point, and I have been requested to sometimes draw more curvaceous stick figures. Sometimes I will consider that in the future. Thank you for voicing your concern.
Stay away from that trap.
And shorter stature people. Shorter stature.
Yeah.
But no, it was always great having you on. We will check out some of your deadlift images next week on our show. And like I said earlier, pick up the book, throw it in your affiliate. Great gift for a coach. If you have a great coach at your box and you're not sure what to get him, this is where it's at. I think seeing your growth, Karl, it's awesome. And I think people. You're on walls of affiliates. You are tattooed on many, many people. How many tattoos? How many Whiteboard Daily tattoos would you say?
I don't know.
There's hundreds.
Over 100. Yeah. Too many.
Too many.
It never, the feeling never changes. I'm like, good Lord, it's amazing to see that. I'm very thankful to help provide something that people feel enough that they can identify with something that they get tattooed on their body. So it's a pretty cool feeling.
We have a couple clients I know that have them because I see it in their videos. And coming soon, maybe this week, a little collab between Karl and Whiteboard. All right, Salt Shaker coming out. Definitely. If you guys, again, if you've not already, head over to our social media, best hour of their day. Put that on your story, please. We want to hit 1,000 shares, 1 million views of this video. So if it resonates with you, if you love CrossFit, if you like Jason Fernandez, share that video. We want to get 100 shares, 1 million views,
1,000 shares, 1 million views,
1 million of everything. Yeah. And Karl's going to collab on us. That's going to be super helpful there. And we got tomorrow the progression. Who am I watching, Cody?
Gitterman.
Ed Getterman. We got Ed Getterman.
Ooh, yeah, he's
Karl.
got his level 4 coming up down
And
there in
then
Tejas out in Waco.
Ryan took his level 4 yesterday, so we're waiting on the news. And then Fern, who do you have Friday?
Hot seat, affiliate hot seat on Friday. Cody, I don't have that pulled up actually. I forget.
Gordon Lake.
That's right. Yeah.
Gordon Lightfoot.
Gordon-
Gordon Lightfoot. Yes. Gordon.
What you guys know that one? That's good.
If you want to be if you want to come on, if you want to be on the affiliate hot seat, hit us up, support at besthouroftheirday.com, and we will get you guys booked in.
Awesome. Well, Karl, it's been great catching up with you. Keep up the great work. Awesome artist, coach, husband, father, all those good things. One of the good guys doing the right things for the right people. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, Jason. Thank you so much, Fern. You're awesome. And hey, big shout out to Cody, man. I'm honestly, thank you so much for all your hard work, bud.
Yeah, easy day. Easy, Karl. Easy, Karl.